My name is Madeline Osborn, and as part of Sprung 2014, I was fortunate enough to be given a cast role in the show Hide and Seeking, which was written by Nicola McMurdo and directed by Zoe Kouros. I played the role of Robbie, whose story of love and loss is followed throughout the play. The role of a performer or a cast member is primarily to bring the vision of the director to life through following their direction, as well as doing a bit of research and character exploration on your own. The role of a performer in this company was integral because, aside from the show not existing without characters to tell the story, this company was a really small ensemble of just 4 cast members, and each of the relationships that these characters have with each other, as well as how they perceive themselves, is really important in communicating the overall message of Hide and Seeking. In the initial brief of the work that was given both at the pitch and also can still be found on the Sprung website, the closing tagline is, "Come and watch what could easily be you or I on stage." This, to me, sums up how important it is that these characters were authentic and believable and relatable for an audience, a really diverse audience, to come and watch and recognise qualities of themselves in the characters, as well as qualities of people that they've known and places that they've been and felt. As part of our process, we sat down as a company and realised that this show, it's obviously a very dialogue heavy show. There are 14 scenes, and of those 14, Robbie is on stage for 13 of them. It's a very interesting timeline in the way that the scenes work, because sometimes there's 2 weeks between a scene, sometimes there's half an hour, 3 months, and so we sat down and really broke up how the timeline of the piece works, because that was really important for us to realise as characters what kind of headspace they would be in, what could have happened between the last scene that we were in to the scene that we were now entering. We sat down in probably our second rehearsal and went through a list of goals that we each had, like individual goals and fears. This was really important, I think, as part of the process, because Sprung is essentially a learning experience. So to have those goals set out from the beginning about what we actually wanted to get out of the process as performers, as well as theatre makers, was a really cool way to start the process, and it meant that we always had that map to come back to about whether we were achieving what we wanted and what we'd set out to start with. Because the show is primarily realism and naturalism with a lot of incorporated stylized movement, a lot of Stanislavski was used, things like emotional recall and magic if. We did a lot of hot seating, so who is your character, what do they want, where are they from, how are they going to get what they want, and what's stopping them from getting it, because that obviously influences their objectives and why they do the things that they do on stage, which, as a performer, you should know at all times why you are doing what you're doing for your character's sake. On our last day of intensives, I was confronted with what felt like a really big mountain that I was going to have to climb, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get there in time for opening night, but I was told from an audience perspective that there needed to be a bigger distinction between the Robbie that we meet at the beginning of the play, who we called Violet's Robbie, and the Robbie that develops as a result of the online relationship with Clint, so Clint's Robbie. I was terrified because I had no idea how I was going to build this second character, this really tense character, from the floor up, because I had just been playing the same character the whole way through the show. And as soon as it was said to me, it made total sense. We need to see the struggle. So rather than reinventing the wheel, which for a few days I tried to do, I went back to the trusty theory and practitioners of theatre, starting with Laban, who was a godsend in that I was able to really explore the physicality of Robbie and how that transitioned from free and flowing and happy to tense and traumatized and really anxious to hold everything together. So doing things like exploring flick and thrust and dab for Violet's Robbie, so very free, very happy, light movements, as well as then going to Clint's Robbie, who became much more of a ring, and the dab was still there, but it was much more of an anxious, purposeful, keeping everything under wraps kind of maneuver. As well as that, I then did some further research into Maya Holt and the idea of using physicality to bring emotion out. As far as new skills that I've learnt go, that would definitely be one of them, realizing that there is always tool belts out there for you to use, things for you to call on, and you never have to reinvent the wheel as an actor. It was also really exciting because I completely broke my typecast, and having feedback from an audience that was always really, really positive, and always the fact that I had proved that I could play more than my very two-dimensional characters that I've been given in the past was a really exciting thing to hear as a performer. For anyone else who would want to take on a performance role for Sprung, I would just say, yeah, you don't ever have to reinvent the wheel. You don't ever have to stick to a certain way of doing something. There are a million resources for you to draw on, from Anne Bogart to Laban. I did some further research in my own time and found a writer called a practitioner, Declan Donnellan, who wrote the book The Actor and the Target. For me, that was amazing because he talks a lot about stepping outside yourself and becoming the character, so hearing and seeing things from the character's perspective, which when you're doing a very sometimes emotionally draining piece, I think it's so important to recognize the difference between where you end and the character start. I hope that this was a helpful resource. Thank you for your time.